Tihe Mariora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko manga wai toku manga, ko watamata toku awa, ko Culpan whanau, ko Oeraka toku marae, ko Ian Culpan toku inga, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hello, welcome and greetings from New Zealand. My name, what I've just done here is what we call a Maori welcome. And Maori are New Zealand's indigenous people. And we acknowledge where we come from and what is important to us. And so what is important to us is our mountain, which in this case is Mount Eden. And what is important is the city which I was born in, which is Auckland, the beautiful harbour. I presently live in Christchurch, which is the middle picture, and I acknowledge that my ancestors came from Britain in those two ships in 1842, which was some of the earliest European settlers into New Zealand. And I acknowledge the Maori ancestry where I come from. And today my talk is around sport, Olympism, education, and at the end I'm going to provide a case study of how you can implement this in a highly successful team. But firstly, in New Zealand we're very famous for our sports, our sport. We're very involved in sport, and perhaps our most famous is our New Zealand All Blacks, who at this moment, this week, are in the semi-finals of the Rugby World Cup. They have won the last two. Hopefully they might win this one in the next fortnight. And of course, New Zealand sport, very much the All Blacks rugby, but our netballers are also the world champions in 2019. Our cricketers in 2019 did not lose the final, but they drew the final with England, but on countback, England was awarded the trophy. And so, three of our main sports, we are the world champions, and of course, individual sports, we have a number of world champions. For instance, the Power Olympian Sophie Pascoe has won numerous gold medals in swimming. But my presentation is not about elite sport, it's about the power and potential of sport to change people's lives. And in New Zealand, of course, we do other sports. And this is very unusual, but very exciting. So if you come to New Zealand, we will try and get you to have an experience like this. It's fantastic fun. And of course we provide facilities like big hydro dams which generate our sustainable power in an eco-friendly manner, and our kids often try and surfboard down the big dams. Great fun. And so the presentation today, I'm trying to think about and to share with you some aspects around how the coach can be educator. And it's very important that we start to theorise a wee bit to broaden the picture about our views of the world. And once we've got a brief understanding about different views of the world, we can start to develop a bit of a philosophy about the coaching process, which I understand most of you people here today are sport coaches. And so we'll look as the coach as the educator. We will look at Olympism, a philosophy of Olympism, which will help in the coaching process. And then I'll summarise with a challenge and then some concluding remarks, and use the New Zealand Rugby All Blacks as an example of how you might implement some of the things that I've talked about in this lecture. So, let's look at how we think. And these here are what we call paradigms. And a paradigm is simply a view of the world. So for instance, I've got my glasses on now. I've got a particular view. I can see a particular way. I take my glasses off and I have a different view of the world. And I put on a pair of sunglasses, I then have another different view of the world. And then I put on someone else's glasses and I have another different view of the world. So these are called paradigms. And I've identified 5 paradigms which are very common in social research, and they're very common in trying to understand the world that we live in, and they're very common for a sport coaching environment. And I'm going to be very brief, but there is a lot of research behind these paradigms. Remember, paradigm is a view of the world. And I'm going to suggest that the coaching process can locate itself in a couple of these paradigms to develop our thinking and our coaching expertise. And the first paradigm is called a functional paradigm, a functionalism. And as the name suggests, functionalism means that things exist in society, structures and configurations in society are there to help society function better. For instance, in our country, if we think of the traffic in cars, our cars travel on the left-hand side of the road so that the traffic flows. So a functional view of the world is that things exist in society because it helps society function better. All right? In our country, once again a traffic example, we have red lights, and everyone knows on a red light we stop. On a green light we go. And on an orange light you make a decision whether you should stop or you should go. And so these things help our society function. And common aspects of a functionalist paradigm is that it has coordinated systems, it is integrated, all the systems are integrated, it's based on numbers, empirical research, it's about thinking logically, rationally, it has rules and regulations, all of which help society work. The second paradigm is humanism, and the humanistic paradigm is about people, about the growth and development of people. And from a historical point of view, we can go right back to ancient Greek times to the famous philosopher Aristotle. And in those ancient Greek times, and previous times too, Egyptian times, Persian times, Roman times, the population believed that the gods, and those societies had many gods at that time, that the gods controlled their destiny. And so the god of the sea, Poseidon, controlled the sea. And so if you went to sea in a boat and was shipwrecked because of storms, it was because the god of the sea was angry with you. The god of the sea controlled your destiny. And it had the god of love, the god of war, the god of the wind, the sun god, all these gods. The greatest god, of course, in Greek mythology is Zeus. And however, Aristotle, the famous philosopher, came along and said, look, gods don't control our destiny. we do. That people, individual people, control your destiny. And so the humanistic paradigm is about human development. It is about humans being in control. It is about responsibility of self, others, and society. It has a strong moral and ethical sense, and basically it's about making better people. If we move to the next paradigm, it's a conflict paradigm, which was first generated by the famous German philosopher Karl Marx, who argued that a view of the world was all around economics. And the view of the world was that the economic system provided how people related to one another, social relations, and how we produced goods and services to be sold to make a profit. Very important, to make a profit. And he said that there were two groups of people. One group of people were the ruling class, the bourgeoisie, who controlled and owned the factories, the land, the houses, and the money. They controlled all those things. And then you had the working class, the proletariat, who owned nothing except they owned the skills to labour, the skills to work. And he said, Karl Marx said, between the ruling class, the bourgeoisie who owned everything, and the working class who owned nothing except their skill to labour, there was always tension. Because these people over here, the bourgeoisie, wanted to make as much money as they could, so they wanted to pay these people over here as little as possible. Over here, the proletariat, the working class, wanted to get enough money for their labour so that they could feed their families. And so there was always tension, conflict between these two groups of people, right? Because these people over here didn't want to pay these people, they wanted to pay these people as little as possible so they could make a profit. I'll explain all this in an example of sport in a moment. Then the next paradigm is the critical paradigm, which became very important during the time of, in the 1930s in Germany, when the Nazi party in Germany came to power. And the critical paradigm is about questioning and challenging inequalities, abuses of power, and injustice, social injustices. It was about challenging those things. From a more contemporary position, it's about asking questions and challenging taken for granted assumptions. And it does have a strong action component to force social change. And the last paradigm is a more very contemporary paradigm, and it's called postmodern, where there is no grand explanation of the world. Here, Karl Marx explained the world in economics terms. Here, the critical paradigm explains the world with a big picture view of inequalities, abuses of power, politics and social injustices. Over here, they say there's no explanation of the world, and it depends on the context in which you live. It depends on the environment. Now this is really important because some of the information that I'm going to share with you today will be in the New Zealand context And you really might have to take what I say and say, is this relevant for the context in Guatemala? Is it relevant for our culture? And so this postmodern view is saying everything is relative. It challenges existing rules and regulations and tries to demolish, bring down barriers and structures and conventions. And a good example of a postmodern view of the world is how Europe has developed in the last 30 years. For instance, there used to be so many countries in Europe with so many borders, and you used to have to go and so many currencies. Now, there are no borders, all right? There's one currency, and so all those boundaries have dropped away. And that's a postmodern view of the world. Now, you might say there's a whole lot of theory behind this, which I don't want to go into, but I do want to say for sport, for instance, for sport, what does each of these views of the world mean for sport? Well, for functional view of the world, sport mirrors society. Sport exists in society to help society work. Okay, help society run smoothly. From a humanist perspective, sport exists in society to help people grow and develop so that they can become better people, so that they can develop a more peaceful and better world. For a conflict view of sport, sport exists in society because the ruling class, the bourgeoisie, wish to exploit the working class. Okay, and they want to make a profit from this. It's all about money. From a critical view, sport can create inequalities. Sport can create social injustices. Sport can create abuses of power. But it can also help reduce inequalities. And I'll give you an example of the South African apartheid, where there was a very much social injustices with the population, and sport was used to change that political system. And so sport can create inequalities, but it can solve inequalities as well. And from a postmodern perspective, because everything is relevant and it depends on the context that you are operating in, why does sport exist? You could say it depends. It depends on where you are. So, sport in Guatemala exists for a particular reason, which might be different from how sport in New Zealand exists. So I want you to think about this is a bit of theorising to start with, and will become more practical as we go on, is from a coaching perspective, where do you sit as a coach? Do you just coach because you want to because it helps society function better? Do you coach because you want to grow and develop better people? Do you coach to make money to rip off the athletes? Do you coach to create or solve inequalities, social injustices and abuses of power? Or do you coach because it depends on your particular situation? These are questions that I would want you to think about as we go through the presentation today. And so, as we move through this, I want to first clarify, what do I mean by sport? And a good little activity for you to do, which we haven't got time at the moment to do, is to say, Well, how do you personally define sport? And and there are many, many definitions. And a working definition that I'm going to use in this presentation comes from the British philosopher Peter Arnold, who says that sport is a valued human practice when it has rules and traditions and customs. Okay, sport is governed by rules, isn't it? He also says that sport has its own intrinsic goals. For instance, in hockey, you try and put the ball into the goal. In football, you try and put the ball into the goal. In swimming, you try and swim faster than the other person. Or running, you try and run faster or jump higher or throw further than the other person. So it has different goals. Peter Arnold also argued that sport is socially interactive. He also said that sport is a contest and competition and has rivalry between the competitors, but they do cooperate. And if we look at the word contest, we break that down into 2 syllables. It's about a test. We test ourselves. But the important point about Peter Arnold's definition, and the one I'm working with here with you today, is that he says that if sport is not practiced in a moral and ethical sense, then it's not sport. He doesn't know what it is, but it's not sport, and it's not necessarily valued by society. Now, you might look at the activity of chess playing. You know, when you move little pieces around the board, you could say, does chess qualify with those 6 things? If it does, it can be considered a sport. If it doesn't, maybe not. We could look at esports and say, does esports do this? The point I've missed out, of course, is that sport is very physically active. Very physically active. And is chess physically active? Is esports really physically exertive? There are arguments about this. You might want to think about, when you have morning tea, a cup of coffee, what you think about those 2 things here. So this is what I mean when I'm talking about sport with you this morning, or it might be afternoon, it might be tomorrow. And so when we look at the coaching process, it's a worthy profession. It really is a worthy profession. And if we look at it, most coach education programs are very traditional, and are largely focused on the coach, right, rather than the athlete. Focused on the coach rather than the athlete. And the word pedagogy means simply the art and science of coaching and teaching, is that we have little regard for coaching on how we might coach people. We just do it in a very traditional manner. And so today, the world is changing very fast, and so we need to be able to look at traditional forms of coaching and ask, is it relevant anymore, that traditional form? Okay? And are our young people who are playing sport responding to to that traditional form of coaching. I know here in New Zealand we're trying very hard to move the coaching process into more contemporary times, away from that traditional view, because we found that our young people don't like that traditional view. And remember, the coaching process, and this is an important point, it's about learning. And so I challenge you people today, what do you know about how people learn? There's a question that would be interesting to talk about over coffee too. Well, what do we know about learning? And so the coaching process, the technical, the traditional view of coaching now is starting to be looked upon as outdated. And we need to move towards coaching individual learning needs rather than technical aspects of the activity. And we also need to know about how our athletes learn. How do they learn? Because the latest research on learning is saying that there are many, many styles of learning. And as a coach, how many styles of learning do you know about? And how can you implement them? And so what I'm saying is that the traditional technical view of coaching may not capture the power and potential of sport in our modern contemporary times. And it may not suit the needs of young people. So, this might mean that we need to look at the coaching process with a view to changing so that we meet the needs of our athletes. And so the coach, as the educator, has all these sorts of things to think about. We need the cognitive, the thinking, the physical, the social, the emotional, the moral, the cultural, and the spiritual. And if a coach aims to develop athletes in all these areas, all these domains, he or she would then be considered an educator. Right, so in New Zealand, for instance, we're now asking coaches, expecting coaches to be able to work and educate on all these sorts of things. That's a big ask. That's really, really difficult. And you know what all those circles really indicate? They're indicating that sport can develop personal and collective well-being. Our country in New Zealand, for instance, its government has got a well-being budget. Instead of an economic budget, they've brought economics and well-being together to form a well-being budget so that the population can develop and grow. So that money is not the most important thing. The most important thing is the growth and development of our people. And so as coaches, sport coaches, we might need to think about this. And so the coach, the barriers, the difference between an educator and a coach, there they are there, two columns. The educator reads and looks at the literature to develop their mind. And they're looking at the athlete as a person, holistically. And they're looking to develop that person. Whereas the coach in the older view is all about physiology and measuring practices and performances and the attainment of physical skill, right? And the application of these skills in competition. Now, they are important. Because if we go back to Arnold's presentation, he sort of said these things are important. But so this is very important, and we need to include that sort of idea. And I pose that question to you today. How much of this are you doing as a coach? It's not easy at all. And so, as the coach, as educator, I want to now introduce the term of Olympism. And this is very simple. It is one of the cleverest philosophies in my academic career that I've come across. All right? Very, very important. And it's the very reason why the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, exists. But what is it? And so, the coach as the educator means what content can they draw on to educate? What are the things that they educate? And what teaching approaches should they use to educate? They're two big questions. The second question is, what techniques and approaches do they use to educate? Means the coach has to have some idea of how people learn. And so I'm coming to the point with those two big questions is, in my view, the coach could well move to being the Olympism, looking at Olympism from a coach education point of view. Okay? And I know many of you are sitting here and saying, well, I don't understand what Olympism is. Okay? And we're coming to that. And so, what is a working definition of Olympism? There's many criticisms about this term Olympism. But as I said, I think it's a fantastic philosophy of how one can live their life. All right? It's bringing sport, culture, and education together. Think about this. It is bringing sport, culture, and education together. It's not just about sport. That's the first point. The second point is, it is about balanced development of body, will, and mind. Or body, mind, and character. Okay? And it's very important that we have this balance. What does that mean? It means that to practice Olympism, we need to not only develop our body physically, but we need to develop our mind intellectually, and we need to develop our will, our character as well. Boy, that's a powerful thing. That is a powerful, powerful thing. Balanced development of body, will, and mind. That's the second point about Olympism. The third point about Olympism is about a way of life based on the joy of effort. Not satisfaction, but joy. The harder we work, the more joyful we become. Another aspect of Olympism is the importance of role modelling. The educative importance of role modelling and social responsibility. And another point is about universal ethics of tolerance, generosity, friendship, unity, non-discrimination, and respect for others. Now, in all my academic career, this slide is the slide that has had the most profound effect on my thinking around education, around sport, around physical education in schools, and how I could live my life. How I could live my life. And in my view, this is a very important slide for how a coach might go about coaching his athletes. This is the content that I suggest a coach might use to develop his athletes. Bringing culture, education and sport together. About the balanced development of body, will and mind. About the joy in effort. About role modelling and social responsibility. And about universal ethics of tolerance, generosity, friendship, unity, non-discrimination, and respect for others. Where did this come from? This is the philosophy or the mission of the International Olympic Committee. This is the mission, the philosophy, the very reason why the International Olympic Committee exists. And I bet you half of you people in the room did not know that. It's the IOC's best kept secret. They don't talk about it. They should be promoting this all the time. It's a fantastic piece of philosophy. If you learn nothing else from this presentation today, I'd love you to walk out the room and say, oh, Olympism is about sport, culture and education. It's about balanced development of body, will and mind. It's about the joy and effort. It's about role modelling and social responsibility. It's about universal ethics of generosity, tolerance, friendship, unity, non-discrimination and respect. Boy, if we lived our lives like that, wouldn't that solve a lot of problems around the world? And so, arguably, this philosophy seeks to develop better people. Okay? It enriches the human experience. It draws on the context of sport, physical education, physical activity. And it has a suggestion that the philosophy of Olympism is a way to lead a flourishing life. Okay? And it's worthy of more examination. And so, Jim Perry, the famous British philosopher, he argues that it makes a significant, Olympism can make a significant development to people. He says that this is a very powerful statement from Jim Perry, that the philosophy of Olympism is the best, or the most coherent, systematization of the ethical and political values underlying the practice of sport that has so far emerged. He said it is the most, right? The very reason Olympism is for this. I argue with another colleague that Olympism is the most coherent, ethical, and social and educative explanation of why physical education and sport exist in schools. So, my fellow coaches, there is good argument for this philosophy of Olympism. And of course, Sarah Tetzel, another academic, she argues that Olympism has three main areas. It's about fairness, it's about equality, and it's about ethical behaviour. Okay? Fairness, equality, ethical behaviour. Jim Perry adds more to that by arguing that it's about fairness, equity, respect, justice, personal autonomy, excellence, reason, rationality. All those are important, he argues, in Olympism. And I'm arguing all those are important in the coaching process. But, like all philosophies, there are problems. There are problems. Firstly, some people say that Olympism has no relevance anymore. Okay? Has no relevance. Some say it is not universal. How could it be universal, they're saying, when there's different cultures? They're saying there is no one definition of Olympism. And you will note that I used the word working definition of what I said was up there. Some argue that it comes from Europe and it's very Eurocentric, only relevant to Europe, not relevant to South America, Central America, North America, Oceania, New Zealand, Australia, Africa. Some argue that it is so closely related to the Olympic Games that it has become corrupt. Okay? And it's also full of pseudo-religious talk. And Kevin Walmsley argues that it has no educative or social value. These are what some people are saying, okay, despite my being very positive about it. And so the Culpan, hopefully the guy who set up the International Olympic Committee in 1894 and held the first Olympic Games in 1896, or the modern Olympic Games in 1896. He coined the term Olympism, and he was educating for a more peaceful and better world. He was also educating for internationalism. And he was also educating for people to become more virtuous. And this is what he meant by Olympism. And as I mentioned before, sadly, in my view, this is the IOC's best kept secret. Why don't they promote this? Why? Why? The reason why is that the Olympic Games have become such a commercial operation that the philosophy has been lost. Look, I'll give you a parallel. What does Christmas stand for? Well, originally Christmas was the celebration of Christ and Christianity. In today's world, and many countries around the world, including New Zealand, Christmas has lost that celebration of the birth of Christ and Christianity and is more commercially operated. Same thing with the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games are supposed to be a celebration of Olympism. But, like Christmas, it's lost its way. Really, it's a celebration of commercial, corporate, international money making. Very sad. And so let's move now to focusing more on your situation, the coach framework, Olympism and coach education. Okay, and so what I'm talking about now, I'm going to throw out the term Olympism education is part of the coaching process. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that it is a culturally relevant, experiential, culturally, meaning it's for your country. It means it's relevant for people. Experiential means it is doing something. You've got to experience. It's a process of learning. So we're learning things. What are we learning? Balanced development, joy and effort, role modelling, universal ethics. And we're learning an integrated set of life principles. There are those four things: balanced development, joy and effort, role modelling, and universal ethics. Integrated set of life principles through the practice of sport. And this Olympism education enriches the human condition. Now, all this is background for how we might go about coaching. This is the content that I think coaches could use. And what is the difference between Olympic education, which I am not a fan of? Olympic education, I am not a fan of. But over here, Olympism education, I'm very much a fan of. And so, by Olympic education, around the world, it tends to be more about the IOC, about the history, about winning gold medals. All right? It's about performance. But and it has Olympism, the little red dot there, right on the margins. A little bit important. But Olympism education is the big red circle, and it has a little dot about the IOC. So Olympism education has Olympism at its core, and the IOC and about performance on the margins. And however, there are criticisms about this, saying vagueness of terms, it's different forms, contested people argue about it, to be honest with you. It has no particular way of teaching. It's a lot of talk, like I'm doing today, a lot of talk. It's not focused on the big issues that maybe we should be to improve and get a better world.